This is our old dairy. It's a place I can remember spending my early years watching Mum and Dad milk the cows. This is the dairy my grandpa built in the early 1960s, and this is a dairy my dad started milking cows in when he took over the farm. It's a pretty small basic dairy, and a fair bit of hard work went into milking the cows in it. That being said, this style of herringbone dairy has been tried, tested, and proven to be a reliable way to milk cows. These days, there are still many dairy farms around that use this style of dairy to milk their cows, albeit on a much larger scale than this dairy. These days, I guess, in a way, our old dairy sits abandoned, gathering dust, forgotten about, after years and years of milking hundreds and hundreds of cows and thousands of hours of work put in. This is because after Dad got sick and almost literally kicked the bucket, probably from working his ass off in the old dairy day in, day out, we decided we needed to find an easier way to reduce his workload. So about 8 years ago, we made the big decision to step away from the old way of milking cows and towards what seemed to be the future of milking cows: robots. Building of the robots began in 2014. It took a few months to get the shed built and the robots up and running. There was a massive learning curve that came with getting the robots. Learning how to use and maintain them was very different and quite complicated compared to the old dairy. The other thing is the whole way you run your farm and manage it pretty much has to change. To understand why this is and how the robots work, we first have to go back to the old dairy and understand how it works. So, this is our old dairy. With the old dairy, you bring all the cows up this laneway. They would then go into the yard. You would lock them in the yard, which is at the front of the shed. The cows then wait patiently in the yard for their turn to be let in to be milked. Once they've been milked, they walk out through a hole in the side of the shed where that red dot is. They then make their way along the edge of the shed back to the track where they walk back down to the paddock. Alright, so these are the robots. So with the robots, you no longer have one track leading up to the shed that cows walk up to be milked, but 3. These tracks are labelled A, B, and C. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand about the robots is there isn't a whole herd of cows coming up at once to be milked anymore, like the old dairy. Now instead you have individual cows coming up by themselves, or small groups of them walking up together. So, for example, an individual cow could spend her night down lane A and then walk up in the morning to get milked. Once she has been milked, the robot lets her out into the race. So, as she makes her way around the race, she will walk back past lane A. Each laneway has its own exit gate from the race, which knows where she's meant to go and not go. So the lane A gate will remain closed as it knows she's not supposed to go down lane A again, and she needs to make her way over to lane B. So, then she will continue walking around until she gets to the automatic exit gate to go back down lane B, and it will open up and let her go that way. Then in the afternoon, she decides to come back up to be milked, so she will walk back up lane B to the robot, get milked, and then be let down lane C to spend the night down there. Okay, so clearly the two designs are very different, but some people might be wondering what's in it for the cow. Why would a cow be willing to walk upwards of a kilometre back to the robot to get milked? Well, the answer to that is every time she comes up to get milked, she gets grain, and it also allows her to go down a new track which will have fresh pasture for her to eat. And the second question, and probably the most important question, is how can a robot milk a cow? Well, with this particular robot, you have 4 boxes and 1 robotic arm. The arm travels up and down between the boxes, putting the cups on the cows. So, for example, when a cow walks into a box, the robot arm moves over to that box. It then grabs onto what's called the cluster and moves it under the cow. It then positions the cluster under the cow's udder by using the camera that's on the front of the robot's arm. The cups then pop up when the robot thinks they're in the right position to attach to the cow. Once the cups are on the cow starts getting milked. This can take a few minutes depending on the cow and how much milk it has. Once she is done being milked, she is let out into the race where she will make her way back down the paddock. After every cow is finished being milked, the box does a short clean that washes the cups and the milk lines before letting the next cow in to be milked. Okay, so after having the robots for 8 years now, you could almost say that they have been tried, proven and tested to work like the old dairy. Or can you? Well, let's look into it. So what are the key things a robotic dairy needs to do to compete with traditional dairies? Okay, so these are the fundamental things a robot needs to be able to do. They need to be reliable, they need to last at least 20 years plus, cows have to enjoy using them, and they need to reduce a farmer's workload. Okay, so let's start with reliability. Okay, so yes, reliability is an issue for something that is so complex and has so many moving parts. Like any business, reliability of your machinery is extremely important, and on a dairy farm it's definitely no different. So to keep it short and simple and to the point, the answer is robots are definitely not reliable at this stage and need a lot more work put into them to get them to the stage where you could call them reliable. The next question pretty much ties into the last question. Can they last 20 years plus like a traditional dairy would before you consider putting a new dairy in? The answer to this, in my opinion, is no. The build quality isn't quite there yet, and they become out of date and you struggle to find parts for them to repair them. I would say the lifespan of a robot would be around 10 years, which isn't long considering there's such a large investment in your business. Question number 3 is, do cows enjoy using them? This is an area where robots are a clear winner in my opinion to traditional dairies. Cows have the freedom to be milked when they want, and they are no longer being poked or prodded at by humans or yelled at, which is a far less stressful environment for them to be in. And the last question is, do they reduce the farmer's workload? This is actually quite a tricky question to answer, and I won't go too far into it because it's actually quite complicated. But I think in short, the answer is yes, provided they are running smoothly. The problem is when things go wrong, you could spend hours and hours trying to solve and fix the problem, but if things are running smoothly, you could have all the time in the world to do whatever you want. The problem is you're never quite sure when something is going to go wrong and when you have to go and fix it. All in all, in the end, unfortunately, I think you could almost say the robots have been a bit of a disappointment. They were put in with hopes to reduce our workload and free up time to do things we all love and enjoy. But unfortunately, it looks like for us, robots aren't quite at the stage they need to be able to work the way we all imagined they would. Anyways, it's always good to stay optimistic, and I reckon there's a massive amount of potential in robots like these, even if they aren't quite there yet. The world is slowly becoming more automated, and the dairy industry is going to be no different. It's always going to have a bumpy start with new technology like this, but I reckon give it a few more years, it'll be amazing what these machines can do.